band where all the action is going to occur, all the innovation is going to happen. It's a massive upgrade of Wi-Fi, and it uses smart radios, cognitive radios, and it ultimately will usurp all the big telecoms with their exclusive control of specific bands of spectrum that they regard as somehow analogous to beachfront property. Spectrum has nothing to do with scarce resources.
Which is part of what I was trying to also introduce today. When you start enabling people to actually earn money on mesh networks, then they're going to maintain them. The problem that we had with peer-to-peer networks, apart from copyright violations and whatever else, the legitimate ones back in the 90s and early noughties, was people had no way of actually getting value. This idea that I got mojo points and I could say I'm special because I have more mojos than you that I can't trade, no one really cares. No one wanted to be sort of top sort of node and because anti-leeching and whatever else and community points or whatever. You don't run a machine on community points. If you earn a small amount of money, if you can actually build a system and a service in out of the way places, then that will actually get people acting as entrepreneurs. It's all about ensuring that they have a reason to do this, not just that they will see over time that everyone's leeching off them and they'll get fed up and stop. But hey, people are leeching off me by paying me money. Good.
Yeah.
So we are wanting to talk about the future world that can be powered by Bitcoin. George, what are some things, now that you know more about the vision we have here in the BSV ecosystem, about things you'd like to see powered by Bitcoin in the future?
Well, I think if we create a secure internet that doesn't cause paranoia across the whole world economies and a kind of new fragmentation of commerce, I think that's a huge achievement. And the development of a new global money that plays the role of gold will be an equally important achievement, and that's the beginning. That's the new platform from which all the surprising creativity of human inventors and entrepreneurs will flourish. So I think that's ample. That gives you plenty to do, and so.
How long do you think that'll take?
Well, in an information economy, things can change as fast as minds can change. And I feel that there's a tidal change of minds across the world related to the blockchain and distributed peer-to-peer solutions to both money and security, and I think it's happening now. It's happening in this room, and it's going to keep happening for the rest of my life anyway, and the rest of yours.
So, Craig, you obviously have a lot of thoughts about what can be powered by Bitcoin and how it can be accomplished. While we have George here, if you could ask him for some advice about how to shape the future course of your work, what would you ask him?
I would probably look at asking you more about where you think information economics will go and how we actually educate people to that concept. How we actually move away and get not just a few individuals like ourselves to understand this, but really start getting government officials, economists, and people in universities to start really understanding that there's one true scarcity, that is time.
Yeah, that is, and I think economics has to be taught in a different way. I mean, Milton Friedman got the Nobel Prize for his worst mistake. And he imagined that money should be, the supply of money should be closely controlled, and its price should rise up and down. And I believe that that's exactly gets it wrong. The value of money should be pegged to time, and the volume of money can grow as fast as entrepreneurs can invent new uses for it, or as fast as entrepreneurs are willing to incur debt to launch new ventures, the money supply can expand. And during the Industrial Revolution in the United States, the money supply increased 163 times in less than a century. That is, and all these meager calculations of how fast money can grow if it's tied to a specific value. During that entire 100 years, the value of the dollar in gold didn't change a bit. During the 200 years of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, launched by Isaac Newton when he established the connection of the pound to the sterling to the gold standard. That was Isaac Newton's greatest accomplishment, I believe. He hacked gold. You know, his alchemy was his effort to hack gold, and he proved that gold couldn't be hacked, and really made the gold standard a triumph. And money vastly expanded in Britain. It fueled the entire world economy with, for 200 years, issuing consols at 3% a year. And the key thing is to have money tied to the inexorable scarcity which time represents.
I'm going to ask each of you the same question now, which is, if you could be in charge of the world economy, what change would you make with Bitcoin? Craig?
I actually got asked for an article, basically, with the elections coming up, what 5 changes I would make as president, like I could put in. I did that today. And I would actually ensure that there are ways of tying all of the financial crime, whether we're talking about drug dealers, terrorists, anything you're talking about, whether we're talking about banksters, the guys who basically take fiduciary custodial money and gamble with it on the foreign exchange markets. And I would tie it back so that every one of them can be traced and stopped. Whether we're talking about money laundering for terrorism, or arms dealing, or people smuggling, or sex crimes, all of that comes down to being able to get their money and hide it. Whether we're talking about foreign corrupt governments, dictators, any of these people, all of their crimes happen because they can launder their money. And if we can have a system that enables privacy and good controls so that the average person can have a normal open life without worrying about their privacy being breached, yet simultaneously stop these large criminal groups, that's one thing I would do.
George, what about you?
I prefer couching it maybe in a more positive way. I think the key thing is Bitcoin BSV is not like cash. It's decisively better than cash because it gives individuals the ability of attestation. It's not just that it stops them from committing crimes. It stops governments or big cartels from charging an individual for some crime he didn't commit. It allows him to have an immutable, unimpeachable record to prove that he didn't embezzle the money or didn't avoid the taxes or didn't conduct the illegal transactions. So it's a positive thing. It's better than cash. It offers the anonymity where it's needed for transactions like cash. But on the other hand, it offers attestation so you can prove that you aren't guilty. And I think it's a big advance for individual rights and privacy because of that feature, that positive feature.
So George, we were talking the other day about when you first learned about Bitcoin and first discovered it. Is there something about Bitcoin that you've always wondered about or confused about or wanted clarified that now that you have Craig sitting right here, you want to ask him?
Well, why is it capped?
You mean the 21 million supply?
Okay, so there is actually 2.1 quadrillion tokens. Now, it is actually a commodity token system. But if it was going to be not capped, then that becomes problematic over time. But where people go wrong is each of these tokens can then represent other things. So I can tokenize other assets using tokens. So in effect, I can create many other forms of tradable currencies with that form of scarcity as the base. But if I was able to reset the amount of money, if I was able to track or trace all of this, then I'd have to say there'd be some way of, I'd need some way of measuring what I'm going to change. And then I start becoming a central bank. So the only way I could figure out to do this was to have a set amount of currency, a set number of tokens that I issued back in 2009 that get distributed in a set way. Because if I change that, if I play with the formula, then it's not distributed anymore. It comes back to Craig controls the system. So how do you make sure that Craig doesn't control the system? You take the rules away from me. You set them in stone. You say, this is my system. This is how it runs. If you want to be part of it, you know how it runs. I can't change. I'm creating a system with immutable protocol rules. And the only way I can do that is as I've done it. So otherwise, basically, if I have a system that keeps changing the amount, then I have a system that effectively allows people to manipulate. And I couldn't solve how people would manipulate systems without setting it so they couldn't.
Then what happens if the entrepreneurs generate a demand for 162 times more money to fund their creations and inventions?
What you're missing is the number of tokens can be increased in velocity and use. So using payment channels, then I can start effectively a near infinite number of transactions between individuals. Now, everyone thinks the old Nakamoto payment channel is actually not secure because if you're going, you could send out part of the transaction. But what they're forgetting is you can actually have that go both ways. So I can have an increase in the amount I'm paying George, but rather than refund, where it becomes insecure, he can give me some tokens back, or even chain those token transactions. And we can keep doing that same process until we settle the channel, allowing us to have an ongoing and updatable channel that every 10 minutes we could have billions of transactions, billions of exchanges.
Yeah. Well, but what happens to that? Why doesn't all the money hodl at the bottom layer? Why doesn't it migrate to the bottom layer where you have this rigorous restriction on the number of total units?
I have a number of units, which are quite large, but each of those units